So, when you go to pick up any of the firearms, you're going to have two big rules you're going to have to follow for each and every one of them. The first one being that when you pick up that gun, your finger is staying off the trigger. You want to put it somewhere on the top here on that slide, but your finger needs to be off of the trigger and outside of that area the whole time that you're holding it. The second biggest rule is that your barrel needs to be pointed downrange at all times. Those are the two big ones you need to remember. If you forget some of the other stuff that I go over, it's not a big deal because I'm going to be right there to correct you if you can't figure out how to load the gun. But I don't want you turning that gun sideways, and I don't want you putting your finger on that trigger until you're actually ready to shoot your target. So to load the gun, you're going to take your magazine and you're going to put it into the handle. It clicks into place. Once that's in place, you can either push down on this slide lock, and that's going to cause the gun to load. It's ready to fire. Or what you can do is you can grab onto the back of the gun itself, pull, and release. Either way, that gun is now loaded and ready to fire. You're going to take aim at your target, fire off your shots, and when the gun is empty, it's going to lock open to the rear automatically, just like that. You're going to take your finger off the trigger because we're not ready to shoot the gun. We're going to place it up on top of the slide here, and then we're going to push on our magazine release. This gun is a paddle that pushes down. Most typical guns, you're going to push that button in. Whatever it is, you activate it, the magazine drops out of the gun, and then we can set it back down. For grip on the gun, I want your hand to be all the way to the top. So if you're left-handed, you're going to hold it with your left hand on there. If you're right-handed, you're going to hold it with your right hand. Doesn't matter which one, but one hand is all the way to the top of the gun, and the other hand is on the side there. Now we're putting this hand on the side of the gun there to get a good firm grip, to make sure we're actually making contact with the gun. Our fingers are wrapped around the front there, and nothing is at the back of the gun. If I cross my thumb up like this and I fire that gun, that's going to come back each and every time, so it's going to come back and cut my thumb. So I'm putting it on the side here, so I'm away from all of those moving parts when I fire the gun. Now for your sights, when you go to fire the gun, you're looking through this little channel here. You're going to find the post on the front end of the gun. You're going to put it inside that back area. Now the tops of these 2 and 3 points all need to be the same height. So the top of this one in the front is the same height as the rear post. That dot needs to be centered in between the other 2 posts as well. So when the top of this one is the same height as these, and the middle of this is in the very center of these 2 posts, your bullet will land right on top of there. And we have a diagram here that's going to give you a nice reference point. You've got your red imaginary lines running across the tops of those 3 posts, and then you've got the one line in the center there running right down the middle. And the bullet is going to hit right where that line is. For your grip and for your stance, you're going to want to step with your left foot forward, your right foot back, so you kind of put your weight into that step, and you're going to lean forward so your center of mass is forwards a bit. We'll be able to correct you on the range there. You really want to stand so that you're comfortable and so that you have a good control over the firearm. You don't want to be standing with your feet together so the gun can push you back onto your heels. But again, we'll be correcting you every step of the way. For the revolvers here, they're a little bit different than the semi-automatics. These ones, they're double action and single action. So once you've loaded this gun by filling those chambers and you close it, the gun is now ready to fire. That means if I go and pull that trigger, the gun will shoot. So you need to keep that in mind at all times, that there's no extra steps. Now for the revolver, you have 2 ways to fire the gun. You can just pull the trigger, and that'll cause the gun to shoot. Or what you can do is you can cock this hammer back. When you cock it back, the trigger is going to become much lighter and it's much easier to shoot. Now keep in mind, if you're doing that, what I want you to do is grip the gun with your primary hand, and your secondary hand is going to come up and cock that hammer. Your thumb can stay to the rear, but it's typically more comfortable to hold it on the side, and it can't go anywhere too far forward because you're going to have a muzzle flash, a little bit of fire and shrapnel coming out of the front end there. It's going to be uncomfortable to have your hand up there, so you're going to want to grip it right back here on the gun. Now when you are cocking that hammer, raising this thumb up that's holding the gun is now making your entire hand vulnerable to not holding the gun properly. So if I go to cock that and I accidentally fire the gun at the same time, I'm not going to have a good grip on that entire gun. So your primary hand should never change that position. It's always your secondary hand that's going to come up and make those changes each time. And as you're cocking it, you're going to want to make sure your finger is off of the trigger at all times there. Right? So your finger goes up on the side, cock the gun, and then your finger can go back into that trigger guard area. The sights work the exact same as the semi-autos that we covered previously. And to unload this gun, you're going to push forward on this switch, tap the cylinder out from the opposite side, and then you're going to push this rod, and all the shells will eject from it. Now for the Desert Eagle, it looks like a big, intimidating gun, but you operate everything the exact same way as the semi-automatic pistols. We only load 1 round into this gun at any given time, so we will load the gun for you. We will turn the safety on. We'll hand you the gun. When you take the gun, your finger stays up and off that triggered area. You're going to get in your stance, grip, and position. So your hand is gripped, other hand on the side. Get your footing ready. Lean into the gun, and then we will flick the safety off when we see you're in a fire position, and then you'll fire the gun. For this gun, we have a series of tests that we'll do as well, just to ensure the shooter is properly gripping and holding the gun. So what I want you to do right now is take the gun, and we're going to see how well you'd be able to handle it. So go ahead and take aim just as I showed you. So you're going to bring your thumb forward, perfect. Fingers wrapped around. You're leaned into it. I want your weight behind the gun. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the gun. I'm going to pull it back to simulate recoil. So I want to see how you're going to handle the recoil of the gun. You ready? So that's what the gun is going to want to do. Now if you relax your wrist a little bit more, I'll show you something. You go ahead and hold it up. It's going to want to come back on your wrist like that. So when you keep a firm wrist like you did on your first shot there, it's not really going to move the gun. So give it a firm grip. And that's basically what the gun's going to want to do. So that's how we'll test to ensure that you're holding the gun properly. Other than that, this gun operates the same way as any of the semi-automatics.